So in this video I want to talk a little bit about events, custom events that you can write into your class definitions for objects. And then of course once you have them, you can write event handlers in the different class code modules such as the presentation tier to actually handle these different events that could be raised. So when we think about object-oriented development, we go back a couple presentations regarding abstraction, trying to distill those individual properties and methods that define a class. Well, we also talked briefly at that time about events that can be included. So events can also go to definition of a specific class. And once you come up with an event that a particular object may have as one of its defining attributes, those events, once raised, need to be handled by any calling class. In this case, perhaps the presentation tier. Just as you would for any form object event, button click, the text change, the form load, just as you would for any of those, you can code an event handler to respond to the event being raised. Now, of course, it's up to the individual programmer, just like it is with the form objects, to decide whether or not they're going to handle those events. I would say in the case of business class objects that you're instantiating and using, probably the event is there because it needs to be handled. Although definition of an event doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be handled. I would say with the example that I'm going to run through, and certainly in the case of Lab 3B, the events that you will be defining in your class definitions will need to be handled at the presentation tier. So I've got a few syntax statements here that outline the declaration of events and how you raise events. It's really pretty simple. You declare an event using the keyword event, give it a name. Typically it would take the object type and a name of that object that the event is associated with. And then in that class definition for that individual object, when you want to raise an event, you raise it by name, indicating by the use of the keyword me, the current object. To be able to see these events on these business objects that might be defined in your application, the objects now have to be defined using the keyword with events. If you do not declare your objects with this keyword, it doesn't matter how many event definitions you're going to have in your business logic, they won't be recognized. So the declaration and instantiation of the objects themselves changes a little bit here when you're dealing with events. And of course this will also have implication as to where the declaration of the object is. With previous iterations of the labs with 2B, you declared your piecework pay objects right inside the calculate pay click event, because that's the only place you needed that. In this case, because you're going to be calculating pay inside calculate click, but you're also going to have an event that has specific details as outlined in the lab requirement that you're going to have to handle, well, now that object scope moves beyond just procedural and moves to the class level. So you're going to declare and instantiate these objects now at the class level or module level inside your application. Working with events, and there's not going to be anything too surprising here when it comes to writing the event handler. It's simply a matter of writing as you would for a text change or button click event, that sub procedure, private sub, give it a name, take from the class definition the object type and give it a name as an argument, and then what it handles. In this case, it's going to handle the products object dot changed event. All this does is invoke a save method on a products object, a product list object called products, and then it does something called fill products list box. Thinking about the business logic and business process that your application is being designed to support, working with these custom events as part of your business objects is a great way to monitor those important occurrences or important triggers that go beyond validation rule issues in terms of piecework underproducing on the piecework assembly line or achieving a high production of pieces. So having those custom events that become part of your application is a great way to further support the business process and the business rules that encompass that process.